very early stage, I was scared shitless.
Okay. Spencer and I just had an amazing info session. We had the opportunity to shake his hand and thank him, of course, and then ask him about our 24-hour shoot. He said, "You guys are fucking crazy."
Because while this has been presented to other people, it's been like, "Oh, you're crazy, give up." That's lunacy.
Yes.
His
You shouldn't do
response was, "Holy shit, that's crazy. I love it."
Yeah.
He actually said, didn't he say?
He
like,
said,
"I want to
"Fucking
see it." Did he
That's
say, "I
right.
want to see
He
it"?
said he wants to come back, and I you better not fuck this up.
He could be on just to close this, bro.
Yes. That was 12 months ago.
We got the honor and privilege of meeting Julio Macat, and it was an incredible moment for us. And now 12 months later, we've somehow managed to get the opportunity to interview him. He's the director of photography behind so many films that have shaped us and so many people out in the world, whether that's Home Alone, Pitch Perfect, Wedding Crashers, Miracle on 34th Street. I could go on forever. And every single film you see on screen right now, he played a crucial role in. Today, we sit down with him to learn so many lessons from his incredible career. So we're super excited. Let's get into it. Okay, well, Julio, I want to start off by extending our gratitude for your time. This conversation really means the world to us, and we're also super honored and excited to be able to share it with anyone who might be listening.
That's right. And also just extend a thank you for, bringing the visual storytelling to not only our artistic careers, but also our childhood. We grew up on your movies, and it's just so exciting to, have this full circle moment as we develop as storytellers, not only in our own right, but also just what that means to be a filmmaker. Just to have this conversation means a lot. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. And I'm here at the ASC, the American Society of Cinematographers Clubhouse, and it's always really inspirational to be here. And our whole motto here is to pass along what we know and to kind of keep the craft of cinematography going. And you guys are the future. And anything that we've done that you've liked, that you want to do better, that's what it's all about. So that's why I'm personally here.
Yeah,
to pay it forward.
We really admire your willingness to share the wealth of knowledge. And something that I love about your films is so many of them are so magical that I find myself able to watch them year after year after year and almost never get tired of them, which is pretty rare. I don't feel like there's a lot of films that I just watch over and over and over again. And that's something that's always been really extraordinary. But to take us all the way back to the very beginning of your journey in film, can you walk us through kind of what made you first fall in love with it? Everything from that like initial spark that might have inspired you to how you started to learn your craft.
The initial spark that inspired me was I was in high school, and I had this girlfriend. So I would always take pictures of her, and at one point I saw the sun was really low on the horizon. It was creating this great shadow, and it made this elongated shadow of her. So I took a picture of her shadow, and it kind of got me thinking, wow, this is beautiful. But what if the shadow kept moving? What if I could be taking more pictures and animate it? So we were fortunate that in the high school that I went to, which was Beverly Hills High School, just by luck, because my dad was working as a watchmaker in Beverly Hills, they had a little film program there, and we had access to cameras, and I started fooling around with cameras, and I really fell in love with capturing the moments, and trying to do things that were reminiscent of being blown away at a movie theater. When you sit down and the lights go down, and then these images come up. I wanted to make images.
That's fantastic. Okay, this is fantastic. I was similar, I guess, background in photography. All my friends kind of know this about me. Film photography was kind of my bread and butter in high school, and the darkroom was my therapy. So I think that I found a similar attraction to filmmaking and the art of storytelling through pictures. I loved my little Ilford HP5, and my grandmother gave me her camera, And I still have that camera to this day. It's the only camera I use, and it's got holes in it. And
Yeah,
I love taking photos with that because it's real. I can
beautiful.
feel it.
Imagine what this camera was a witness of. So many great moments, you
Yes.
know. I I think that, you know, and it goes all the way forward, you know, 35 years later, whatever. I think about um, how capturing that moment is the essence of cinematography, you know, and what I've learned from some of the great cinematographers who came by this place, the society here. I learned that a lot of times, you know, great images are just given to you. They exist, you know, whether it's a beautiful sunrise or a beautiful sunset or a magical moment that in and half of the battle is capturing those, especially at the beginning of your career where you know you don't have all the resources, you don't have all the big lights,
Sure.
you know, but you do have beauty that's out there for the grab. So for example, you know, in the projects that you guys are doing with limited resources, for example, the shittiest light of the day is when the sun is high in the sky, you know, at noon or around that time. So when you're planning your day of filming, if you can find a location that is shaded of that bad lighting, for example, a tunnel or under a bridge, or you know something that naturally takes away the bad aspect of photography, then you're helping yourself. And one of the biggest things I've ever learned is when I have limited resources, then use what you have. And for example, if you can't really light something well, but you can shoot a scene at magic hour, you know, and that's the time when you're driving a car and you don't know whether your headlights should be on or off.
Sure.
That's magic
I
hour.
like that description.
And it lasts about, you know, 7 to 10 minutes depending on where you are. So if you can't really light something well, but if you can get 2 or 3 cameras and then you can set up a scene and then document that scene and that good lighting, that good lighting will work pretty much for every camera angle because it's at the time where photography loves that light because it's at the time when the brightest thing in the screen in your picture and the darkest thing, there's the least amount of variance in that. So, you know, your brightest thing might only be half a stop or a quarter stop, you know, brighter than your darkest. Photography loves that because it's able to handle, you know, that range really well. So I recommend when you can't afford to do good lighting is place your scene in a good lighting setting and then document it.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And to see that you sort of started this journey with photography, as you've kind of gone along in your career, how has your relationship with photography changed or stayed the same? Like, are you still doing a lot of still photography?
You know, I've been lazy about it. I do it, you know, when I'm on vacation and then when, you know, when you're when something just hits you as being really unique or cool. But now having an iPhone, you know, on you at all times has kind of changed the game because it used to be that you had to have the intention of carrying a camera. Now it seems like everybody has a camera and everyone's running into these happy accidents and shooting cool stuff that they put on Instagram. But the whole idea is to recreate those great accidents
Sure.
and set them up to work for you in your story. Yeah, and if you can take one thing only from this interview and just take that home with you as like a little present, um, try tried to tell a story with one photograph, with one picture, even in cinematography. As you're breaking down your story, and then you think about, well, why is this scene in the movie? Why did the writer write this? And what is the theme, the point of this one particular scene? And if I had to shoot that scene, that whole scene in one angle and one angle only, what would that angle be? So then your mind, it guides the camera into what's important in the story. And in the end, that's the very best of being a storyteller with visuals, or being a cinematographer. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Because it gets confusing. You can do so many things. You can do a steady cam shot that goes around 360. You can zoom in, go out, do all kinds of stuff. But does it serve the story? Did this one shot that you came up with, if you turn the sound off and everything, is it telling you what was intended for the scene?
Sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And right now, for a class project, I'm editing a short film. And in the coverage, they kind of have shot like everything from every possible angle, from every possible focal length. And I'm curious, w- what are your thoughts on that? Like, does it make sense to do that, or does it make more sense to be very intentional in the way that the film is shot?
It makes sense to be more intentional because two or three halfway okay shots are not nearly as good as one great shot. So it's like you're throwing stuff up on a wall to see what sticks, but it's not following the story thematically.
Hmm.
So yeah, you can do a bunch of shots and maybe land on something by accident. But if you're guided by the story, and if what is the shot about? What you should. It's okay to have extra coverage, so you can intercut scenes and stuff like that. And in fact, you need it. But do it with intention. Do it with a guidance of the story, the theme of it. Why are we shooting this scene? What are we trying to say in this scene? Is it a love story? Is it a killer about to kill somebody? Is whatever it is, with visuals, you want to push the story along and you want to tell the story with the camera.
Sure.
So usually that doesn't take you to every possible angle, every possible focal length. Something that's close on a face is going to have a certain effect. And something that's a long lens close up, as opposed to being closer to your subject on a wider lens but a similar size, that has a big difference too emotionally. So rather than to just be throwing stuff at it, what I call a fruit salad, make it by intent. Do something, because whether it's right or wrong, and this is a perfect time for you guys to be trying stuff, do it with intention, and not just, well, let's just see what we get.
Changing gears here a little bit, Julio. Can you describe your process, or I guess your journey through the professional world of filmmaking and storytelling in the industry that is always changing, as we know, especially in the past kind of 5 years with COVID and the numerous strikes? What is your journey with DPing and just visuals kind of evolved from?
I think that the number one thing is to not be afraid of technology and not be afraid of the new stuff. And there's always going to be new cameras, new boxes. I mean, a camera, the box, and a lens. Whether it's the slickest Panaflex, whether it's
Yes, sir.
uh, you know the 10,000 ASA camera, whether it's whatever it is, it's a box and a lens that's
Hmm.
recording. So if you cannot be intimidated by the technology, which is there, 8K, 12K, 18K, does it matter? I mean, too much definition in an image can be okay and can be bad. It can also look like a soap opera if it's not handled properly. the fact that you don't need much lighting to get an exposure now. You can shoot at 1600 ASA or 3200 ASA. Okay, cool. So you can shoot with very little lighting. That doesn't mean that faces are going to look good,
Right.
you know. And if you're paying an actor a lot of money, they're going to expect to look a certain way, and the studio is going to want you to do a great job and to make the actors look good. In the end, the most important things of our process is the script, that it's a good story, the performances in it,
Yeah.
that the performances are good. If you don't have those two things, everything else, you could have the best production design, you could have the best everything, and it's still a piece of shit movie because your story and your performances are not good. You know, there's a history of amazing looking movies that were never seen because, you know, the studio lost all their money. And they never put the movies out. So about my journey, yeah, the COVID stuff, being internal, being secluded at home and stuff, it goes against what we try to do as filmmakers because, you know, being a good filmmaker is about having had experiences, whether you're a director or a director of photography, you need to have lived, you need to have been places, you need to be turned on by stuff, you need to be passionate. What I'm saying is that being secluded with COVID and being internal, not having the opportunities to go out, experience life, be watching sunsets, be watching sunrises, seeing. This is why being in New York is so cool, because you're hit by all the stuff all the time, and you carry that with you. And then when you're trying to tell a story, you know, that's your background. That's what you've lived. So things have changed, but the whole idea is to try to stay inspired and to try to stay turned on about a story that you want to tell and be really passionate about it. You know, if you're going to invest all the time in shooting something and making a project happen, then do it with intent, you know, do it with conviction, because
Sure.
you really have to tell a story and it really needs to make a point. Those are the best projects to work on.
Going back to something you said a little bit earlier, you talked about the studios and actors. They have an expectation regarding what the image will look like, and I don't want to get bogged down by the physical image itself, because I'm a screenwriter, for instance. That's what I want to be. That's hopefully what I'm going to be someday, and that's all I want to be.
No, that's what you are. You're not going to be that someday. You are a writer.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Let's put the flag on the ground and say, I'm a
I am a
writer,
writer.
goddammit.
Yes,
You're right, Julio.
I'm gonna write.
That's right.
Okay, there
That's
we
right.
go.
But this understanding of visuals, I have a specific question about this. What are some of your, or I guess, what are some of the expectations of others that are either prompted or poked towards you regarding representation? For instance, if you're shooting an actor or a character who's someone of color, what is your responsibility as far as like how authentic is their skin color on screen? Do they want to appear darker, lighter? I'm a light-skinned individual, but like in some photos I look even lighter. In some photos I look even darker. Do you see a lot of people prefer certain areas? Do the studios prefer something?
No. I think that that's something that you can finesse, you know, especially in the DI. You can make a face a little bit more saturated with color, a little less saturated with color.
Sure.
But staying true to, you know, an actor gets hired for their performance and for their look, and you should try to duplicate that and make them look as good as they can.
Sure.
I've had situations where I thought, oh, you know, if I make my light a little bit cooler, this actress, I can cite it on the movie The Wedding Planner. I thought that Jennifer Lopez looked really good with a either neutral or slightly cool light to her. Just the way that it hit her skin, it had a beautiful look to it, because of her skin pigmentation, and it was a subtle thing, but when I look at the movie again, she looks beautiful in it, and in part was because it was before. Now it seems like a lot of the current movies are very warm, very, yellow, red, warm to them. That's a style now. And certain actors, you have to remember that you're not just lighting the set. And yeah, this warm light looks really cool on
Mm.
the walls because it looks like a sunset in the background. But how does the actor look within this light? Because it's not going to make sense to have, a whole sunsetty warm light in the background and then a cool light in the foreground if that light is supposed to be coming from a similar direction.
Sure, sure.
So this is where certain cameramen light sets more and certain cameramen light actors more. I come from the place of trying to make the actor look the very best and then trying to incorporate that in the setting of what I'm shooting, and still creating a mood, that's right for the story. But for example, in a situation like that where it is sunsetty and warm room, maybe there's another light motivation in the foreground that's on the cooler side, that's not the same, and that even creates better separation because you have something cool, something warm. Photography wise, that's a good thing. So to answer your question, I go by how the actors look best, and we do a little test before we start shooting. We do a hair and makeup test, and that's where I test the color of light, the quality of the light. Am I bouncing the light? Am I going direct through diffusion? How high is the light? Which makes a difference on the cuts underneath. And then every actor's face, and I shoot a lot of there's a lot of women who love the way that I shoot them and ask for me, actually, like Jennifer Aniston and a bunch of others. They know that I work hard to make the actors look good. I love actors. I'm married to an actress. I love, I love what they do. I have a tremendous appreciation for what they do. I think it's a really difficult thing to do when you're filming, when you're kind of getting naked in front of the camera, naked in the sense of vulnerability,
Yeah.
and I respect that, and you want to portray them the very best way that you can. And that's worked for me for my career. I've been hired because people know that I care about how to light actors.
Right. And that relationship, I don't know if you want to segue here, but the relationship between DP and actor, not to simplify that in any way, but the wide, sprawling, and spanning relationship that happens on and off screen, I imagine's a sacred space. Is that right?
Well, yeah, what you do is one of the many things, and I know this from because I'm on the inside of it, and I've experienced it, seeing what actors go through. They're worried about a lot of things. They're worried about doing their performance right. They're worried about being treated properly as they're acting with another actor. By that I mean, you hear the expression, when an actor is very giving, which means that the best way to be an actor is not just acting, but also listening and reacting to the other actor. And when you have two people doing that at the same time, it creates a trust, and it creates better performance. And if you establish early on that, as far as the way you're going to look in the scene, don't worry about it. I've got you. I've got your back. And we're not going to shoot anything that looks terrible up your nose, or weird angles that make you look fat or stuff like that. once they know that, then the actor will have trust and forget all about that, knowing that somebody's watching over them about their looks, and they can just worry about the performances. That's a big deal, and that's something that trust with an actor is something that develops. And as a writer, you're going to find too that actors are going to challenge you on some of the stuff that's written.
Yeah.
And depending on different levels of professional, you're going to have an actor who's well known call the writer and say, my character would never be saying these words. So I'm following the story through, but then suddenly this character became psychotic. Am I supposed to be psychotic here because I'm saying all these words that just are out of continuity with the rest of the character?
Mhm.
So that's your relationship with. Usually that doesn't happen too much, but that will happen between a director and an actor, where the actor challenges the director. It's like, why are you telling me to do this? My character would never be doing this. So the director has to say, well, you're doing this because of it, dot, 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 and have a reason for it. And the director should be the person who knows the script and knows the story better than anybody else, and has the capacity to see the overall picture. That's what they have ahead of the actor who's thinking more about their character.
So to bring us to some of your specific work, I imagine that you get asked about Home Alone a lot, and we do have a few
Yeah.
questions we want to ask about that. But before we get into that, are there any projects that you've worked on that you really, really love that maybe you wish people asked you about more? And if so, like why? What about that project is so special to you?
Well, I shot a movie called Crazy in Alabama, which I loved. It had to do with the '60s and civil rights, and I got to recreate some black and white photography that was like part of the documenting of the era, the March on Selma and stuff like that. And the movie didn't get a lot of publicity, or it wasn't seen a lot, but I love the work that I did on it. Um, but I also don't get asked about Wedding Crashers a lot, and that was sort of a lightning in a bottle, kind of like Home Alone was lightning in a bottle, where you got a lot of the elements together. Well, Wedding Crashers was also many elements that came together. And the best work that I did on it was just to capture moments, and part of that was shooting rehearsals and, working out the scene, without, we noticed right away that the rehearsals were like the best take, because it was fresh, it was comedy, it was crazy. And even though oftentimes you need a rehearsal to see where actors are going to go, and to see where to put the camera and stuff, we thought, let's just document it and see what happens. And it was like comedy gold, a lot of it. So that was something that maybe didn't get talked about as much as I'd like. But comedies are tough. Comedies are hard, and you never know whether it's going to be. Well, for example, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. I thought it was going to be the biggest piece of shit ever made. Because it was this guy going crazy, going, all righty then, and just doing all this crazy shit. And you're going, oh my God. But then afterwards, you saw that he was completely out of his mind, but so was the character. And then it was funny. And, yeah, the first time I met Jim Carrey, the director brought me to his hotel room and said, I want you to meet Jim. So we knocked on the door, and Jim opens the door, and he's buck naked.
Of course he is. Of
Wow.
course he is.
And he goes, hi, how are you? And then, so what's the first thing you do as a dude? You look down and you check out his junk. And then I don't know what came to me. And I was, hey, mine's bigger than yours. And then from that moment on, we thought, oh shit. So he was kind of testing
That's
me
amazing.
and the director to see,
Wow.
to see whether we had a sense of humor, and just that comeback was like, okay, all right, we're doing this. We're
good.
embarking on
Yeah.
this insanity
Amazing.
together.
That's
But
extraordinary.
comedy is a trip. It's you just never know what's going to work, what's not going to work. I've been fortunate that a lot of the comedies I've done, like Nutty Professor and stuff like that, that they have connected, and they've been funny and kind of hold up.
As we said, we do have some questions around Home Alone. And well, first of all, Spencer, this is a movie Spencer and I watch every year. I've lived in Chicago. I've seen the house. We used to drive by it every year. I also lived in New York for a minute, most of my childhood actually. So I know every kind of hallmark that is Home Alone, right? Like I've passed by all those spots, the Plaza, Central Park, all of it.
And we're referencing it all the time. It truly is one of our favorites. And prior to
Right.
the first time we met you, I think Tay and I had a couple conversations where we described it as like one of the few perfect movies that we know of, because what movie is so wonderful that so many people around the world can just watch it year after year after year, and every time it's a blast. Like every time I come around to watch it again, I'm looking forward to it.
Mhm. That's right.
So a huge note of gratitude for that.
Most definitely.
Oh, great, man. Thanks. We had a blast making it, and the kid was great. I should send you some pictures of Macaulay sitting on the camera, sitting on my lap.
We'd
and,
love that.
just
Yes.
messing around with it. Yeah, I looked cool back then.
You still look cool. You still look
very
cool.
cool.
Don't worry.
Yes.
I look in the world.
But yeah, so today, Home Alone is known as probably one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time. But I'm curious, what did it look like when you were first brought onto the project? How were you brought onto it? And at that time, was it an underdog? Did people think it was going to be this, smashing success? Like, what kind of did it look like at that very early stage?
At the very early stage, I was scared shitless because it was an opportunity for me to shoot my first studio movie. It was meant to be a kids movie. The director Chris Columbus and I were introduced because there was an executive at Warner Brothers who thought we should work together. We were both kind of this was more than 30 years ago. We were on the younger side, and our inspiration for the movie was its Christmas Story. And we thought, let's try to make a movie that's fun for kids, that's entertaining, that's got some gags, and then it evolved, and I just wanted to do a really, really good job. So I would stay up all night thinking about, fun gags, or things I could do with the camera. And then it developed, the style of shooting it with the wide angle lenses and a little camera, that we used to call bonus cam. That was just like a small tiny little camera that we'd place in different places that was sort of exploring stuff, and we used to call it bonus cam. And then that camera became like a really cool angle. And then we started to really think about where to put bonus cam because it was the funnest shot of everything we were doing. So then we started to figure out how to tie it to a rope and throw it down a chute and then swing it on a rope to make it look like the paint can's point of view. So So it was just getting involved in something that developed into being sort of a live action cartoon. And the wide angle lenses worked in many ways because it was also the way that the world is perceived by a little kid, so that's low. I spent a lot of time in preparation, like on my knees, looking at everything and looking, the effect you have when you visit like your mother's house or a place where you were raised, and when you go in there and then you see, and everything seems so small,
Mm.
right? Everything seems so little.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted the reverse of that. I wanted to to reverse the idea that a little kid would in fact then see the world as bigger than life. And that translated into wide angles and being low with the camera. So things like that kind of worked. And then when the story works and when the kid is really fun and everybody's encouraging everybody else to do what's the very best version of this that feels like a cartoon.
Yeah.
What's the best version to tell the story where you see, oh, here comes here's a string attached to the thing, attached to that thing that's going to fall. And then you show that to the audience. So there's an anticipation that, oh, this is going to be fun. And then somebody walks to the door and they get burned on top of their head. Stuff like that was really cool to do. And at every turn, we kind of excelled, and without really knowing it. We didn't know it was going to be a big hit. We just thought it was going to be a cool movie for kids. And then, if I should say, the number one reason why it resonated with everybody and everybody loves it is because it empowers kids to take care of their home and fight the boogeyman.
Mm.
And that's a huge theme. That's an amazing. Everybody grows up being afraid of what's behind the door, and to empower this little kid to protect himself, to protect the house. It was a really big emotion that resonated with the world. And every single kid, came up with an idea of how to put a can over their door so that if the bad guy came, he could hit in the head with a can.
Sure.
And that made people feel good. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I don't think I thought of that as an empowering story, and I totally felt that. I think that's so amazing. I remember seeing it when I was Kevin's age. So I remember
Yeah.
seeing that and thinking, hey, that's me on screen, but I don't know if I was, I guess, old enough to understand the massive
No,
feeling.
no. I mean, the kid goes, "This is my house.
Yeah.
I have to protect. I have to defend it." Or when the kid goes, "You guys give up? Or are you thirsty for more?" It's like, I'm taking care of business.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kick your ass.
Absolutely.
What kid doesn't feel good about kicking the bad guy's
That's right.
ass?
I think that something that's so cool is how intentional all of these decisions were that you all made in the process. While researching this episode, I saw a letter that you wrote to, I guess it was some of the crew prior to the beginning of it, talking about this world you wanted to create, that it was from Kevin's perspective, it was from the perspective of this kid. And it was really incredible to see that was planned, because when watching it, I always felt the softness, the warmth, the church scene comes to mind. It feels so distinctly magical, and I don't know that I could have verbalized that, but getting to read that note was really, really cool, because I got to get a little glimpse into how you thought about that. What are some of the ways that you were able to bring that warmth of the feeling of the film to life and really make that happen?
Well, it's so important to to bring everybody else into what you're trying to do. A director of photography is nothing without a production designer who is going to help bring the intent of a director, but also with style, with taste, with color. So I never understood why there isn't more of a correlation. I think in the great movies, I think that everybody is very in tune, and even the editor. Um, the editor should know what we're trying to do. I still, it blows my mind to this day that the editor usually comes in at the end of a production, and I want an editor there. I try to get an editor in halfway at least, if not at the beginning of filming. Yeah, at the beginning of filming, because you have to tell them what your intent is, and you have to say, this is what I was going for. Try this. This is work. It's not a completely different movie that's being handled by an editor at the end of it. The editor should know what the intent is, and so should the production designer, costume designer. We're all talking about colors. We're all talking about not overdoing it and doing stuff with restraint. Because otherwise, you create what I call the fruit salad, where you got every color in the world. And no, the great films have a look, they have an intent. They know we're going to use these colors for this, we're going to use these colors for that, you know? So yeah, it just all kind of happens inherently and sort of accidentally, but not so accidentally. It happened, and that letter was a way of just getting everybody, hey guys, this is what we're all doing. And it changes everything. Even the sound person knows that if you're going to do a stunt, then they can't put a microphone here because somebody's going to fall and it's going to ruin the sound, or whatever. Just everything. We're all related, and a great film is when everybody kind of comes together to do the same thing.
That's an incredible piece of wisdom that
That
I think we
is.
really need to keep in mind. This idea of the cohesion of the film project, because I think a lot of times we've witnessed and been a part of projects where everything feels very separate. It feels like camera is this bubble over here, and director is this bubble, and then production design, and it's all very separated. But I think what you just said right there is the key. So that's hugely helpful.
Definitely, definitely. You'll see that the best movies sometimes are writer director, and there's a reason. It's nice for the director if they've written the piece, and then if they see that with the actor that scene is not working, it's good for them to say, hey, we don't need that scene. Rather than doing that, let's do this other thing that's driving the story better. So that's one combination of getting everybody together for the same goal. So yeah. If you're doing comedies, the goal is to have these vignettes of having fun, of having stuff that's funny. If a gag is not funny and you're doing a comedy, you're doing the wrong gag. It's simple.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it starts from the writing of it. The writing has to be funny. The intent of what are we saying has to be there, and then a great actor will kick it to the next level.
So Tay and I are both aspiring film producers, and this idea that you're outlining here of the cohesion of the film set, of everyone working together and having that clarity of vision, how can we best be supporters of that? How can we create an environment and a culture where we're empowering everyone to have that creative collaboration?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think pre-visualizing stuff, putting putting people with similar personalities together, that's what the best producers do. Is they, and it isn't just their credits. Obviously, you can put people together by credits, and then as a director, you can say, "Oh, I want my movie to look like Home Alone." So you hire me, and then you hire somebody else who did a great job on a different thing. That's one thing, and that's part of it. And quite frankly, a lot of the times you get hired because people want to play it safe, and they want to say, oh, I want this movie to look like this other
Mm,
movie that you did. It's usually something that's been successful, and they want it to be successful.
right.
Um, but personalities, man, personality is everything. If you can put together a group of a director, producers, a director of photography, a production designer, um, everybody, if everybody's handpicked, not just for their expertise, but also their personality, their positivity, their wherever they are in their life, to where they don't need to be on the set, but they're there because they really want to be, because they respect, whether it's they respect the writer, they respect the director. You wanna put people together who have a similar personality and positivity to them. Those are the projects that work the best.
Sure.
Is because then you have a shorthand, then you have commonality in trying to do, and to put it plainly, people who don't want to shoot shit, you know, who don't want to just be there because it's a job. They're there because they're passionate about what they do. They love what they do, and it's an opportunity to do something special. That's, as producers, think in those terms,
Mm,
that you want to put same-minded people together, and people with talent,
Yeah.
and you want to encourage some of the things they've done before, and you want to leave some openness to, hey, we can do some special things that hasn't been done before, maybe.
yeah.
That's what I recommend.
Tay and I's first year in film school, we were on a film set, and we asked one of the older students there for some advice, and for like our capstone kind of final film. And the thing that they told us was, they said, just raise a small amount of money, just get it done, check the box, and graduate. And we were kind of astonished that that was the advice, because we were like filmmaking has given us so much. Films like Home Alone, Pitch Perfect, and all these films that have shaped who we are mean so much to us. How could that be the approach to it? And so I think it's really great to hear that on a professional level, having passion and positivity is the thing that also is rewarded in outcomes as well. So that's really interesting to hear.
Well, it's everything, because in your end product, it's reflected on your end product. It's very rare that you have a tumultuous, aggressive, nobody gets along, or people are just there for the paycheck, and you come out with something special. It's very
Mm,
rare. It does happen, usually because the actors are good and the script is good, and then everything else gets massaged. But when you have that, I just finished a movie with Zoe Deschanel, Charlie Cox. It's a romantic comedy called Merv, which is the name of a dog. The director was a woman named Jessica Swale from England, who was the kindest human being I've ever met. Loving, nurturing, appreciative. She would write little notes on the call sheet, thanking the crew for the work that we did the day before, and
It's
saying,
fantastic.
I was able to get everything I wanted. Thank you so much for hustling. We're working with dogs.
that's amazing.
At one point, we had 50 trained dogs. It
Wow.
requires patience. You needed patience. You needed tolerance. You needed to wait until the weather got better. And nobody got grumpy. And it was one of the best experiences ever. I hope the movie turns out great.
Yeah.
It comes out at Christmas.
We'll definitely have to check it
And
out for
We'll go
sure.
see it. That's right. Yeah.
yeah, I, and I killed it with the dog. I shot some really good dog work. You know,
I look forward to seeing it.
I got
It's fantastic.
got him looking so good. I tested him. I saw how the eyes looked better, where I could put my lights,
Sure.
and then the dog becomes more of a personality. So when you guys watch the movie and you go, "Oh shit, I see what Julio was trying to do,"
Yeah.
his eyes are like, he's like another actor. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's amazing. And that was such a cool moment because like I can see how passionate you are about this, and that's the coolest thing in the world to me.
Yeah.
Um, Taking it back to like some of your inspirations, who are some of they, and like what have you learned from them in their work?
I tried to learn from the best, and try to develop my own taste because nobody can do things the same way. But Roger Deakins is sort of my, if I had to pick, it's a close tie between three guys, but Roger Deakins is at the top because he's able to shoot real stuff in a way that nobody else can. And by real, I mean the camera's in the right place at the right time with the right lens, and yet he can do Bond movies, he can do comedy, he can do, drug cartel movies, whatever he does, Blade Runner, 1917, whatever he does, it's just right. Um, Caleb Deschanel, amazing director of photography. Emmanuel Levesque, Chivo, amazing cinematographer. And it's great to have these references. Every young aspiring cameraman has to be looking at these movies and saying, "This is really good. I want to do stuff like that, and then I want to do my version of that." And that's the beauty of it, is you can never really copy anybody. Everything looks different.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own way. We can't even imitate ourselves when we come back the next day. Everything changes. The light changes,
Yeah.
the situation changes, the person looks slightly different. So pick somebody who you love, whose work you love, and then develop your own style with that influence.
Sure.
That's a big recommendation of mine. I still do it. I still really appreciate seeing a beautifully shot film, and then develop your own style.
It's fantastic. I have a follow-up question to, I guess, the DP and visual department. When you are brought on to a project, is your first call to your first AC? Are you calling a gaffer? When you're building your crew or your side of the visuals department, what are you looking for? Or do you already have it in mind? Let's say, okay, I'm shooting a
Well,
comedy. Do you have that?
it depends. It used to be when you did a lot of movies back to back, which I did for a few years, you have a crew that you always hire because, they're really great and the personalities are great and you know them and you have a shorthand and it's much easier. But anymore, we work a lot on locations and different places, and you can't bring many people, sometimes none. So I do have people I work with on the East Coast, but also sometimes they're not available because they're working on other stuff. So the days of maintaining a crew because you work all the time, that has not happened very much for me or for many
Sure.
guys.
Mm.
Um, Unless you're working all the time, which is maybe 10, 15 people are working all the time and keep a crew going. So most important to me, the gaffer is really important because the cinematographer does three main responsibilities. The framing, which is either myself or a camera operator that presents me with a frame that I like. The movement of the camera, that enhances a moment, whether Macaulay is sitting on the bed and the camera is slowly drifting back, or whether the camera is slowly drifting forward. It's two different emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's that. And then the most important thing for a cinematographer is to create the mood, to make it feel like a happy moment, make it feel like a sad moment, make it feel proper for the moment. And that's working with a gaffer. So telling the gaffer what you're going for and saying, I think we should maybe do lighting from here with these type of lights, and then having a gaffer that goes, well, we got these new lights that are stronger. You want to try it and see if it feels more like a streak of sunlight, and then you go, yeah, let's try that. So that's sort of shorthand. So I would say, in order of importance, if I could pick anybody, the camera operator I'm very, very picky about. That would probably be my first call. Then second, the gaffer. Then the camera crew comes together. And the number one thing is really good focus and the fact that everybody gets along. And there's 9 people in a department where everybody's kind, everybody's when the shit hits the fan, which it always does, and you're running and gunning, where people don't lose their cool and they keep their calm composure, that's really, really important. Then the grips and the dolly move is very important. So that's probably my number 3 call, is the dolly
Yeah,
grip.
it's fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. And another thing that, like, fun fact that we noticed about your work is that you've worked with, I think it's 16 or 17 first-time directors. Is that correct?
That's right.
What about working with first-time directors is important to you, and why do you do that a lot?
So cool.
Because I think I have a good way of suggesting without intimidating, or I present options and I say, we see the scene. Everybody comes with ideas of what they're gonna do. A director will have shot list in mind, or actually written out, of all the shots that they think is important, and then you rehearse the scene, and then you see how your planning goes according to what the actors actually did.
Sure.
And the biggest mistake everybody makes is they force their preset ideas on however the scene blocks out and however the actors work it out. You have to be open to what they're doing so that you can adjust, instead of just forcing them to do what you want them to do,
Right.
and but also have a guide for the actors.
Mm.
They also need to know that, as a director, you when you talk to them and you're trying to block out a scene, you say, we thought you might come in from here. We thought you might try coming over here. And then, we're going to have some cameras here for that piece. So then when it feels right to you, turn around and go over there. And 50% of the time the actor will say, well, I don't think I should be doing that, because I think I would stay here and talk to this person instead. And then a good director will say, yeah, let's try that the first time and see how it goes. You don't just shut them down immediately. It was no, because I thought this was the way I saw it. So there's that part that is finessing a good director, that will let the actors come in with ideas, but also enforce their own ideas. So I present options of, we could do it like this, we could do it like that. I think in my mind, if I had to shoot this scene in one shot, where would I put the camera? And that's usually a good place to kind of start for a master shot before coverage.
Sure.
And then what happens in life and what happens in making movies is that you have all these great ideas, and guess what? You got 10 minutes to shoot the scene.
Oh yeah, we've been there.
In 10 minutes, the producers are coming in and they're pulling the plug, because your 12 hours are up, and we're operating at the cost of $12,000 an hour.
Yeah.
It usually costs about $200,000 a day to shoot a bigger size movie.
Sure.
So then the producer says, we have to finish by such a time. And then you go, holy shit, I got 10 minutes. What do I do? And that's what separates, the good DPs from the standard DPs. And then you come up with a way to shoot the scene in 2 shots that you can do in 10 minutes. And then you put the camera where it's important for the moment of the scene. And then you have a cutaway so that if you do 2 or 3 takes, you can intercut between the takes.
Sure.
And that saves a day, and that gives you a career, and that's why I'm here.
Wow, that's amazing.
I'm actually gonna write that down. I like that line. Yeah, that was good. Shifting gears here again, Julio. You talked a little bit about having an editor earlier in production, being a part of the, I guess, early narrative and I guess constructing the piece that the audience consumes. What other support do you think, if you could have a dream director and say, hey, I need this, and these are my non-negotiables, what does that look like? Or for people like us who are starting off, what are things we should be aware of to help support our DP and just visual department?
It's funny how you say these are my non-negotiables. That's never ever going to happen
Of course not.
because because you want to do the job and you don't want to be known as the person who, oh no, he turned my job down because, if he put the line in the sand, he wouldn't do this, he wouldn't do that.
Sure. Okay.
That
Yeah.
almost never happens. But I think what's the most important? Gosh, that's a loaded question, man. It's the communication. It's the rapport that you have, the friendship that you have with each other, and it's the vulnerability that if you say to someone, "I hired you, but I don't know exactly how to do this, but this is what I'm trying to do." Right. And that other person gets you and doesn't belittle you from it. What I love the most about newer directors is that the smart ones absorb everything that you have to give them, but they still do their version of the movie. That's really important because you have to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know how to do this, but I'm hiring you to help me. And then the reverse of that is I don't take advantage of that. I don't say, well, you're never going to need that, or so there are some grumpy people who will immediately think, well, this director doesn't know shit.
Mm.
So why am I working hard for this director? But that's not the gig. He got the job. He's directing. Let's try to help that person make the best movie that they can.
Sure.
And it's just about treating people. There's a way of saying, I'm not sure that the scene is working, and you don't overdo that. But at times I've said, feels like it's falling flat. You want to just like shift it up and do something different, or change. Let's change something because this is like sitting like a rotten tomato. So
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know if I answered your question,
No,
but
I think that's right. I think the mindset is exactly what I was after. So that's fantastic.
So, when you're crafting a shot in a perfect scenario where maybe you have plenty of time, how do you know when it's ready? Like when you're satisfied with the shot, with the lighting, with the composition, with the camera movement. Like one that comes to mind is I remember when you came here, you showed us the really long oneer at the beginning of Wedding Planner.
yeah.
Like how did you know that okay, it's time. We're going to go for the shot now.
That was kind of by design. It was something the director wanted to do to hold the attention. It's a classic way of starting a movie with momentum, because it's a continuous shot, and it was a Steadicam shot that was very complicated with a lot of light changes on it. So because when the camera looks one way, lighting is good this way, but then if the camera turns around, those are then flat lights when you're panning the other way. So you want to turn those off. So we had, I think, 15 light changes, and this was
Wow.
before everything was electronic.
That's incredible.
So it's like guys on dimmers, moving things up and down. But the best thing I did on that shot was that I was concerned that at the beginning of the shot, the Steadicam operator would have to walk up this ramp because it was stairs, but the stairs were so many that we decided to make a ramp and then paint it to kind of go away, so that the guy could walk up a ramp instead of stairs. And I was concerned that he was going to fall and hurt himself. And selfishly, I thought, but here we are spending half a day getting the shot ready. If he hurts himself, I'm totally screwed. So I got production to hire another Steadicam operator as well as a backup in case something happened, which was the smartest thing I ever did, because after take 7, the guy was done. He couldn't go up that ramp anymore. And the other Steadicam operator, who later became my Steadicam operator for a few movies, he had the advantage of seeing the rehearsal and then the shot work out 7 times. So he had seen where to be, and he had also, in his background, he had done the show ER, which was all Steadicam, moving. And he got it on the first try.
Wow.
He got it on take 8. And the best thing I did was to have a backup for that person.
I can't even imagine how much preparation goes into a shot like that.
Think about R1er for the 48.
Oh my goodness. And I'm just imagining, like, the shot in the film looks so elegant. And I'm curious, like, if we just looked like 5 feet behind that, I wonder what we would have seen.
Yeah.
I imagine that was extraordinary to be there and witness that and be a part of something so cool. So that's
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It's great to do something by design like that, and I highly recommend it, especially where you guys are. Do continuous stuff. It's really fun because it engages the audience. It doesn't let them go, and it's great. It's great.
I think there's one important thing we like to ask all of our guests, which is, throughout this conversation, you've provided us with a lot of incredible wisdom. I think I already have a list of things that, like, I want to make sure are a part of our next projects, and I'm really, really grateful and appreciative of that. But I'm curious, is there any key piece of wisdom or a lesson you've learned in your career that you think might help anyone listening to this at all?
Yes, don't shoot for low, shoot for high. In other words, be as ambitious as you can probably be, and then scale it down. Rather than to limit yourself with what you're able to do. And this includes, asking great actors if, they wouldn't mind being in your production. You'd be surprised,
Yeah.
that sometimes with the right way of asking, with the way that you pitch your story, if it's something that you're really passionate about, you call a really great actor, which is, going back to the thing, most important of all, script. Second most important is your performances. So what graduates the level of your expertise will be determined by who your performers are.
Sure.
So the better the performer, the better your film is going to be. And shoot high, shoot high, and be super passionate about it. It's, if every project that you did, you had the attitude that you have to make this project. It's not even a choice. I have to make this movie. I have to do this because it's that important to me. If that's there, it will translate down to every facet of your project, from your everything, from your performances, your clothing, your production design, everything. Start high and make it count. Don't shoot shit. Don't shoot stuff that's standard. Don't tell stories that are boring, that don't make a point. It's too hard what we do in order to waste the opportunity on something that's not inspirational, motivational, that has a point, that says something. There are so many important stories to tell about inequality, about politics, about just unfairness to so many people. There's so many stories where you can make a statement that, you know, you want to make it count. You don't want to do something, oh, because that's kind of cool and I've always wanted to do ... You know, do it because you're compelled to make it. That's what will make it good.
The last thank you that I wanted to say was when you were last here with us. We had a conversation at the very end of your lecture. We went up and shook your hand and said thank you for coming here. And we told you about a project that we were working on. We told you about a 24-hour shoot where we were shooting 5 films. We ended up shooting it, and we did actually, and it was an amazing set, a phenomenal interaction between our entire crew and cast, and it was so much fun to learn from. But you were kind of the only light in our life who wasn't a part of our production that was supportive of this, and it was a really exciting moment for us to see not only an industry professional that we hugely respect say, hey, go do this, but also go do this because you love it. And I guess that's the end creme de la creme line that I want to leave with is just thank you for that. Thank you for that love that you spread, that you inspire, and that you gave us.
Yeah, that really meant the world to us. And I specifically remember after that conversation, Tay and I had this profound moment of just appreciation for you, because to have someone like you believe in us and believe in this crazy idea that we had, I think is part of the only reason we were able to do it. And it really meant a lot to us. And that project, which there's so much to learn from it. We made a million mistakes, but it's probably one of our favorite projects we've done because we got to do something we were passionate about with amazing people. And you played a role in that.
Thank you guys.
Of course.
Thank you for acknowledging that. That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. You got to send it to me.
We totally can.
We will do.
Yeah, I want to see it. I'm glad I lit a fire under your ass. That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll send it over to you, and feel free to give any feedback because we're always trying to learn. But this conversation has truly meant the world to us. I already know after we hang up on this call, like Tay and I, we try our best to be professional, but we're probably going to be freaking out and like, oh my gosh, that was incredible.
Yes, sir.
We're so excited, and just thank you so much for this.
Cool.
This is everything to us.
I'm happy to help. Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure. And as Haskell Wexler used to say, take it easy, but take it.
Well said.
Fantastic.
We appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much, Julio Macat. Have a good one, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right.
See you.
So that's the best episode yet.
What an honor and privilege. And Tay, he did it again. The thing he did for us for the 24, he did again. Because we talk so much about the importance of the people, of the set culture, and that's here all the time that's rejected. We're told that we're wrong and that we need to prioritize the cheapness, the skipping the steps. And dude, he just did it for us again. Everything he talked about was through the lens of positivity, of a good set culture, of the story. Everything he was saying wasn't like, I got to make sure I shoot on a triple 35 sensor.
He never mentioned a camera.
No. In fact, he actually specifically called out against it. He was like, 8K, 16K, doesn't matter. Like, gosh, that was incredible. I cannot believe how many gems he just shared with us and how much we learned. And if you want to continue learning, we had another incredible opportunity to sit down with the legendary William Akers. He taught us about screenwriting and how we can improve our screenplays. If you want to check that video out, it's on screen right here. Have a good one, y'all.